Hello, my name is Rob Kinneen. I am the Outreach Director for NATIFS, North American Traditional Indigenous Food Systems, here today in Alaska, of which I am from, and I am Tlingit from southeastern Alaska. Today, in conjunction with the USDA Food Distribution Program for Indian Reservations, the FDPIR, we are going to be making a bison rolled meatloaf. Ingredients from the FDPIR box are ground bison, saltine crackers, 1% milk. The carrots are frozen or canned. There is an opportunity to use the cheese out of the box, but I've chosen to use cheddar instead. And canned condensed tomato soup. Items that we have that we'll be using with it are indigenous and have been foraged for this event are spruce tips, which pop in the spring, and they are high in vitamin C. You've got labrador tea, which is again kind of a nice tea, but it's also something that is I like to use in savory cooking. And then yarrow, which is medicinal, but in the spring it tends to just have nice tendrils, so we've chopped that up. We turn our oven on, it's 350 degrees. So onto the meatloaf. We've got 2 pounds of bison, ground. We're gonna add the crackers and the milk, and that's gonna just create a little moisture to the meat, which is not necessarily saying it's not moist, but it's lean. So this is a way to just kind of add a little moisture and texture without it being another animal product. So we're gonna take the milk, mix it into the crackers, and let that just absorb. Again, I just crushed the crackers by hand right in the package and then just measured it out. And what you're waiting for is just that. In no time at all, the milk just absorbs into the crackers and it makes this. Okay. Now we've got the crackers and milk have been absorbed. We're gonna actually just take this, put it into the bowl with the bison. And what you wanna do is also make sure your bowl is big enough to hold all these ingredients. So we've got this, we've got the salt, pepper, and onion, or garlic, I'm sorry. We're gonna add that right in. Little indigenous flavors and local flavors. I'm going to remove this. I was using this as a demonstration to show you what Labrador tea looks like. This has been dried pretty thoroughly. It's usually a little more vibrant green on the top, and then you always notice that rust on the bottom. And again, spruce tips, you find these, it's late May, early June, so you'll kind of find these poking off the end of a spruce tip, and I love the neon green. And so you're going to have that little flavor. It's kind of like, people say if it's like mint and rosemary had a baby, but the beautiful part is that it's all just a unique flavor. So we're going to just add that right in. And again, I've got some dried oregano and some parsley as well. All right. So this is the part where you get the rambunctious son or daughter, maybe 5, 7 years old, and get them to kind of clean their hands, which I did earlier. And we're just going to kind of mix this up. So what I like to do is just kind of put it right in the middle and then kind of turn it onto itself. And that way you're getting all the ingredients thoroughly incorporated. And you're on the right track when it becomes like one, homogeneous looking situation. So you've got the meat, but then you don't see the clumps of the crackers. And you don't see clumps of the herbs or something like that. So you just kind of keep it going. And I like to just again put it into itself and rotate the bowl a little bit. So this is a rolled meatloaf, and this is something we grew up with. It's something I've actually written about and talked about because as a child I had our family had a foam green recipe book with all these recipes in it, and one was a rolled meatloaf. And I think it used a bunch of canned ingredients and frozen ingredients. So I kind of zhuzhed it up a little bit. I've done different variations of this. Sometimes using local farmers' vegetables, for example. But this one, we're kind of working with what we have. So again, looking at this is perfect. It's pretty consistent. You see little flecks of green. You see maybe the cracker in there. It's not drippy. It's pretty firm. A lot of times you want to let this just sit for a minute, but I'm going to kind of work this, and I feel like it's a pretty good deal. So we've got this ready to go. Now this is a little technical. So this is a dish that you might want to do just before getting through the day It's kind of front forward, meaning you kind of put a little effort into it, but then, you know, once it's cooked, you can take it and slice it and warm it up, or even eat it cold. I will say I've probably done that once or twice. Yeah, so we're gonna have a pan, some plastic wrap, and I'll show you what we're gonna do next. I'm gonna wash my hands, just 1 second. So before I make the meatloaf, I'm gonna make a sauce real quick. I'm gonna take a condensed tomato soup. And I'm gonna add, I'm not really gonna add salt because again, it's a canned item, so I know there's a lot of, you know, a lot of salinity to it, a lot of sodium. We've got yarrow, we've got the spruce tips, we've got the labrador tea. I always think of the labrador tea as a really nice back note, so it's never gonna be something to me like the yarrow and the spruce tips are kind of, you taste it or you can smell it right away and you just kind of get this blast of freshness, brightness. Labrador tea is kind of a base note in the back. So I always think it's got to play with the other ingredients to kind of, you know, you don't really put Labrador tea by itself, in my experience. So I'm going to take all of these and add them right to the tomato soup. Give it a little mix. And we're just going to let it heat up, and this will be our sauce for the soup. Now, this is obviously condensed, so, you know, the recipe is 1-to-1. You're supposed to add a cup of water to this. I'm going to keep it thick. I might add a little water. I'm going to get it warm, check it out, and then see what the viscosity looks like. Viscosity is like the thickness of the sauce. So if it is really dense, you might want to add a little water to it. If you add a little too much water to it and it's a little runny, you might want to just let it reduce a little bit. It's a game. But it's going to add a nice little texture and flavor to the meatloaf. And we've got some beautiful little herbs in there. They're going to make it nice and local in Alaska. So we're just going to put this over the heat real low and just make sure we're, you know, it doesn't get away from us. On to the meatloaf. Baking pan. You want some parchment paper or tin foil to cover the baking pan, but not right now. So we're going to put this off to the side. Again, you might need to like get a little reinforcement, some teamwork. I'll show you. I've made this a multitude of times, so hopefully it'll go very smoothly. You take your baking pan, you put plastic wrap over it. You take your meatloaf, put it on the pan. Now you're just kind of working it. And what you're looking for is one consistent size. Meaning, like, you know, if you're looking for a 1/2 inch thick, I like to push it right up on the borders of the pan, at least 2 of the borders, so that you have a little reference point to keep it nice and flat, all right? Or nice and consistent, so it doesn't get away from you and spread too thin. All right, so if you look at it, you can kind of see it's a little slopey. So again, I'm just going to kind of push it down a little bit here, cheat it just to kind of get it right up on that corner, redistribute the meat a little bit. All right, so we've got, you know, probably good like 1/2 inch parameter here, or thickness, I'm sorry. And we've got this kind of built up around here. What I also kind of like to do is I'll push it down a little bit right here. So you want to leave a lip. Along the lip, you want to leave that a little more high, a little up, and I'll show you the reason for that. All right, so I'm pushing it down and just kind of condensing it. You see all those beautiful little flakes? You see the spruce tip and the herbs kind of peppered through here. You do see a little bit of the crackers that are on there, but it's pretty evenly distributed, so that's great. All right, so I've got carrots, and I'm going to just take these carrots and kind of put them on here. Now, look, I'm kind of building like a 1/2 inch like barrier. So I'm just kind of putting these carrots down. And I used to work at a deli in Anchorage, and the owner of the deli would say stuff like, you know, you'd be making a sandwich, and he's like, hey, you got to do EBRs. EBRs, sir? He's like, yes, equal bite ratio. So what that means is you don't want all your carrots in one area. You want to spread them out, so every time you get a bite, there's a little bit of carrot, a little bit of broccoli, a little bit of cheese on there. So we're going to kind of go for some equal bite ratio situation. All right. So that's kind of looking good. Now, I don't like to jam it in, but I kind of like to put a little tension into it so it gets into the meat a little bit. And I'll show you why in a second. Next, we're going to go with the broccoli. Again, I've kind of taken this and I chopped it. You can put it in a blender, not a blender, like a mechanical chopper. That will work just fine, but so does doing it by hand. I am going to kind of, I blanched this fresh, and these are canned, so I obviously rinse the water off. You want to get the residual moisture out of that as much as possible. All right, so you see we've got a beautiful little green consistently kind of across there. Going to make sure we get all the goods. Okay. Again, a nice little lip across the edges. Now we're going to do the cheese. And again, there's different cheeses. You can use something like a spicy pepper jack. This is cheddar, a nice sharp cheddar. That's kind of my jam. But then in the commodity food box, I believe there's like an American cheese that you can use, sliced or shredded. Just kind of whatever you can get an EBR on is great. Okay, so could go with a little more cheese. But I think it'll be all right. You'll get the gist of the situation here. So cheddar across there. So just like I said, you kind of tamp it down into the meat. Now this is where the magic happens, my friends. We're going to take this. And we're going to make sure our parchment paper is close. We're going to take I take the pan and I will actually kind of lift this up. I'm going to pull the meat into me. So I kind of lift this up so I don't get myself dirty. Put this right here and I'll just kind of pull into the meat. So I'm rolling this into it. Now, from this side, I'm peeling the plastic away from the meat as I'm doing this. Don't roll the plastic into the meat. That's a bad day. You can kind of jimmy it a little bit and make sure that make sure it's kind of going across itself. You see how this stuff, I'm kind of pushing this in a little bit to make sure the seal, which is kind of the whole deal of having this here. So now I'm kind of pushing and creating tension and smoothing it out so it's consistent. I like to kind of push on the edge. And I'll just kind of pinch this a little bit. And what that does is make sure that you don't have a lot of stuff running out of the end. So we're just going to kind of pinch that a little bit so that it seals up. Now, this is where the science happens. I've done this a multitude of times. So you've got this crease right here. You see this? And like I said, I tried to make it fold. And we won't say we lost. We won't say we won. We'll call it a draw with everything. But I'm going to kind of pinch this a little bit so that everything's kind of incorporated sealed into the meatloaf. I'm going to cover this back up. I'm going to pick it up, move it. This is where it doesn't hurt to have a buddy in the situation to help you kind of do this. Put down parchment paper. Again, you can just use the pan, but you're going to be doing a lot of cleaning after it. So I like to kind of put down something to just help prevent that. Now, I put it this way. I'm turning it sideways. I just feel like that's always worked best for me. I'm peeling the plastic back, and I'm pulling this and choking it up into the edge, right? And I'm going to kind of just cheat this back a little bit. And I'm going to make sure, I'm going to try and get the seal on the bottom. All right, push this down. Oh, she's a beaut. All right, now one thing I have learned the hard way, I'm going to take some metal forks and just kind of put them here, because when you put them into the oven, if you have a commercial oven or you have a home oven and it's convection, it'll blow this, and sometimes it sticks to here. We have a really nice looking meatloaf. Now this is where you get your ketchup. All right. Now what I'll do is I'm just going to kind of use my finger a little bit, just kind of make a nice little glaze with it. All right. Now with my other hand, I will get the and you don't have to use any kind of hot sauce or spicy sauce, but if you like a little zip, you get a little zip. All right. Now we're going to take this, drop it in the oven for about 25 minutes, and we're going to cook it to about 160 internal temperature. So it is nice to have this is ground meat. It's nice to have a thermometer so you can poke it in. If not, a couple of different things you can do. One is this is going to be the densest part, so obviously the sides are going to cook a little bit quicker with the surface area. Sometimes you can take a knife after 25 minutes and poke it in, leave it for 10 seconds, pull it out, and just test it on your wrist, or test it like some bakers put it like right here. Just anywhere you can kind of feel if it's warm, if it's hot, if the cheese is melted, for example. If it's lukewarm or cold even, then you got to keep it in the oven. Obviously a meat thermometer would be best, but sometimes that's not the option. If you're really unsure, you really don't, you got to check it out. You can just cut it open. It's going to ooze out a little bit, but it's better to be safe eating something that's been cooked correctly than undercooking it and maybe hurting yourself or your family. So we're going to get this in the oven, all right? When you're putting utensils down, you're holding this paper down. Make sure they're metal, not plastic. I won't tell you why I know that. Okay, 25 minutes. So we've got our meatloaf rested. I've got the sauce off to the side a little bit. We've got yarrow, labrador tea, and spruce tips in the sauce. And look at that viscosity. I have to say I did add a little water to it when I cooked it down and kind of melded the flavors. It got a little thick, so I added just a little bit of water. But I think that looks great. And then we've got the meatloaf. It's nice and rested. So what we're going to do is just kind of get a spoon out of the way. And we're going to cut from the center just to get a nice shot. Oh yeah. All right, so you've kind of got the color in the middle. You've got the vegetables. It's kind of a good way to sneak vegetables into a meatloaf. And I like the color variation. You've got the, you've got the red and the green in there and the melted cheese. So we're just going to cut off another chunk. Drop that right on the plate. A little bit of sauce just to do it up. And here we have it, a bison rolled meatloaf with carrots and broccoli and a tomato foraged sauce with labrador tea, spruce tips, and yarrow. All right, enjoy. Thanks for watching.